Thank you.
Okay, I guess I'll just kick it off. I'm Dan Baran, the town planner. I know most everybody here. I'll introduce Lorraine Black. She's one of our wonderful consultants who are doing this Resilient Portland project, which is focusing on the flooding issues and heat issues in the downtown area around the police station, senior center, and library. And with that, I will give it to Lorraine.
Thanks so much, Dan. Thanks. First, our Resilient Portland team want to thank you so much for taking this time to join us tonight for this presentation and discussion. We have a few, excuse me, let me just get this set. We have a few housekeeping items that we want to go over. We're just going to go through the presentation and we just ask for your feedback after it's done. We'll certainly take we've got a small group, so it'll be very nice and informal, and we'll be able to hear all of your comments. And we are scheduled till 7:30 tonight. So this is the second of the two planned public workshops for Resilient Portland.
And Lorraine, if I could interrupt real quick, could you share your screen again? I think something in the process of getting this started, it stopped sharing. So if you reshare, that would be
wonderful. Thank you. That would be.
It's now loaded and we're on the agenda slide.
Great. Okay. Thanks. So again, this is the second of two planned public workshops for Resilient Portland. The first was in July, and one of several of the Resilience Opportunity Area projects in the Connecticut Institute for Resilience and Climate Adaptation, CIRCA program, called Resilient Connecticut. Tonight, we are very excited to present the final design concepts and next steps towards implementation of these improvements in relieving the flood and heat impacts.
I can't hear anything. Can other people hear?
Okay, thanks. I was going to say the same thing.
Okay.
I was wondering as well. I was toggling with my volume. Lorraine, if you could double check that your microphone is working okay.
Yeah, and please start over because I couldn't hear anything.
I could hear her. I just think she needs to get closer to her mic.
I agree, Margot.
Oh, it's not, nothing is coming through.
Yeah,
oh, no, we can hear
that
you
was much better.
now. It was just a weird fluke.
Okay, all right, great. Yes, so let's start. As good as a small group, we can start back.
Thank you.
All right, holler and let me know if you can't say anything, you can't hear anything. That's not the intent. All right. So first, our Resilient Portland team is really want to thank you for taking the time. This is the second of two planned public workshops for Resilient Portland. The first was in July, one of several of the Resilience Opportunity Area projects in the Connecticut Institute for Resilience and Climate Adaptation, the CIRCA programs, Resilient Connecticut. Tonight, we are very excited to present the final design concepts and next steps towards implementation of these improvements in relieving the flood and the heat impacts that you're all experiencing in the center of downtown Portland. This evening, after introductions, I'll present a quick project overview for those who joined us for the last workshop as a reminder, and also for those who are joining for the first time. Ellie Peterson will then present the design recommendations, and Jeffrey Morris and Logan will lead us through the next steps towards a goal for a successful implementation of the project. Our team has been working over the last year in collaboration with the town of Portland and the CIRCA staff. Many have joined us tonight. AECOM and members of CIRCA will be presenting tonight, and we'll introduce ourselves. I'm going to start with the AECOM team. I am Lorraine Black. I am the project manager and a registered landscape architect. And next, I'd like to turn it to two others from our AECOM consulting company, Jeffrey Morris and Logan.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Jeffrey Morrison Logan. I'm helping out on a lot of the public outreach and communications, and I got a long background in urban planning as well. So looking forward to our conversation at the back end of our meeting tonight. Ellie?
Hi, everyone. I'm Ellie, a landscape designer. I'm looking forward to hearing some of your feedback.
And the Circa team, I'll start with Mary Buchanan, who leads the project for Circa.
Lorraine, I'm Mary Buchanan. This is Mocha, who is insisting upon. I am one of the community resilience planners at Circa, which stands for the Connecticut Institute for Resilience and Climate Adaptation. We are based at the Avery Point campus of UConn. I'm not going to talk too much tonight because I'm getting over being sick and you don't need to hear me coughing, but I'm luckily joined by two of my colleagues. So I will pass it to John.
Hi, everybody. I'm John Trzynski, Director of Resilience Planning at Circa and the Project Director of the Resilient Connecticut program, of which this project is a part of. I'm going to pass it to Nicole.
Good evening, everybody. Nicole Govert, another community resilience planner at Circa.
Thanks, Nicole. I'm going to just start looking at going through the project overview pretty quickly. First, if Mary is willing, as she's getting over her cold, just to go over some quick background about the Circa program and how Resilient Portland really got started.
I think, John, can I pass that to you?
Yeah, no problem. No problem. So this project is funded through a program that the University of Connecticut and Circa is leading called Resilient Connecticut. And the program is meant to assist municipal governments with developing projects that address flooding and extreme heat, both of which we see and expect are exacerbated by climate change. And our program has a particular emphasis on critical infrastructure. So, typically we do a vulnerability assessment phase of our program, and for that we worked with the River Council of Governments, the Regional Council of Governments for Middlesex County. We did a vulnerability assessment of that region and looked for places where there was critical facilities that were impacted by flooding and extreme heat, other types of climate challenges. And this area of Portland was one of the places that rose to among the top of our list of places in need of support to develop solutions to the flooding challenges. So as part of the program, we hire, on behalf of the town of Portland, we hired this consultant team, AECOM, and they have been diligently working on, developing a whole concept plan that includes a number of different strategies to deal with the flooding issues that we're going to hear about tonight. If you'd like to know more about our program overall and hear some of the other projects that we're working on, there's a website, resilientconnecticut.uconn.edu, where you can go and learn more about it and get in touch with us if you have additional questions. So I think I'll leave it there and pass it back over to the AECOM team.
Thank you so much, John. So as John described, the Resilient Portland project focused on this particular block in downtown Portland. The study includes the police department, the public library, and the Waverly Senior Center, all critical community facilities and resources in the center of town. The study area bordered by Main Street, Waverly Ave, East Main Street, and Freestone Ave also include parking to support the facility, as well as green park space and the playground for the community. So looking at this in plan view of the study area, there's, as many of you know, there's been recent observed flooding, and we've shown it in the red dashed area. And we also, in our study, used results from a preliminary flood modeling study to look to see what the extent of the flooding would be for 2 to 100-year flooding zone, which you can see in the blue within the parking lots and next to the playground. And this really is the low point within the whole study, as well as beyond. And all the flow towards the low area and towards the inlets are shown in the graphic. The study area is also within a high heat impact zone, and we've noted the lack of existing shade trees within the area, and this really creates a much hotter conditions for people that are walking, parking, and playing within the study area. So we, AECOM had a number of site visits, and we've been with interviews with the town staff and meetings, and we've observed the challenges in addressing flood, heat, and accessibility with the evidence of a lack of trees, the large areas of the pavement within the parking, and we also noted that there was standing water in the catch basins. And during one of the site visits, our engineering team noted the existing pipe sizing in all of the inlets within the study location, and concluded that in one of the main outlet pipes at a key location inlet, it appeared that there was an undersized pipe for the system, and this may be a main contributor to the backup and flooding in the zones. And taking a quick look at what the project objectives are. First, of course, reducing flood impact on the critical core of the town, making sure that the community and stakeholders through these meetings and the advisory committee meetings, that the priorities really drive what the strategies and the design will be, developing plans to reduce stormwater runoff, and apply any of the future projections for climate and for precipitation into 2050 and 2100. And lastly, to reduce the impact of extreme heat for the community. So as we started to look at and analyze everything that we were pulling together over this last year, we started by putting together a design toolkit. And this is a way for us to be able to approach the final design recommendations. And it included, again, reducing impact of extreme heat, reducing runoff, educating the community about resilience and why we're actually doing all this work, improving those neighborhood connections to this key location within the town, and increasing the capacity of the stormwater system. So looking at all of those lists of those 5 design challenges, we started looking at how we can incorporate solutions into a design. So for example, increasing the capacity of stormwater system by replacing that undersized pipe that we had observed would be able to take additional stormwater from all the drainage system. Reducing runoff, using green infrastructure such as like rain gardens and bioretention basins, by reducing some of the amount of pavement within the parking area, all helps to contribute to reducing that amount of runoff that goes into the drainage system. Certainly important to improve the connections within the neighborhood, create shaded pedestrian connections, really helps to make a comfortable environment and be able to have folks be able to connect to the library and to the senior center. Adding shade trees and shade structures within a highly used green space in the playground, again, helps to create a space for people to find relief from extreme heat, and understanding the importance of all the work that we're doing and making a difference using interpretive signage is really a help to have stewardship opportunities for the project itself. So now I'm going to hand this over to Ellie Peterson, and she's going to go through the design recommendations that we had developed.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Larry. We took all those goals and created a single rendered plan, which you can see here, which applies all the strategies that Lorraine just discussed throughout. Over the next few slides, I'm going to zoom in a little further and break down some of our ideas. But I think it's also worth it at this point to emphasize that this design is intended to demonstrate one of many ways that this block could be improved for climate resiliency. And we do hope that as this project is circulated and funding sources are sought out, that you can fall back on that design toolkit for alternative solutions to some of these issues if you do need to do so. But let's go ahead and dive in a little further. We go to the next slide, please. And the next one again. All right, so there might be a little bit of repetition here, but it is helpful to have the graphic to describe some of our recommendations. So in terms of updating the stormwater system, as we discussed, we recommend assessing catch basin E, which is the bottleneck that all the runoff in this area seems to be funneling into. The outlet pipe at this intersection is undersized. We do know that. However, some additional stormwater analysis would be needed in order to determine the optimal configuration and size of the pipe that should be replaced here. Next slide. So as far as reducing runoff that contributes to flooding, we've addressed this in 3 ways. So first, we reconsidered the parking lot layout, and we were able to reduce some paving areas while still maintaining the same number of parking spaces overall. And on this graphic, you can see the added green space indicated by the red dotted line. And then as part of this exercise, we also recommended some additional permeable paving spaces that would be made accessible to the senior center, which is indicated here in purple. Next, we considered areas at a lower ground that could be turned into bioretention beds, which could help treat and store water runoff. Next. This section is taken right at catch basin E and is looking from the playground towards the gazebo and helps to visualize the design concept here just a little further. You can see that runoff would first drain into the rain gardens before then filtering down into the stormwater system. We also considered that the excess soil could be repurposed as small berms in the lawn area to help add some extra visual interest, shield some of the surrounding parking areas, and help direct and contain rainwater in the park. Next. In order to improve neighborhood connections, we reconsidered several new accessible pathways throughout the park area, which provides more direct access to bus stops along Main Street and also encourages greater walkability between the senior center, library, playground, police station, and picnic areas. We also received some feedback during this process that cars often travel pretty quickly in the parking lot and considered the recommendation of a designated pedestrian zone crossing. So that's that orange area, which could be raised and pair also as a traffic slowing device. Next. As far as reducing heat impact, our main tools used here were trees and shade structures. So we recommended new shade tree placements throughout the park area and a shade structure provided for the community playground, which is shown as the yellow-blue triangles. Next. And then lastly, the best public spaces are cared for and celebrated by the residents. So we thought that there could be an opportunity to engage the public through interpretive signage about flood impacts, biodiversity, and water treatment methods. One suggested location is shown by the purple dot there, but it could be in a variety of places. Another idea is that the crossing that was pointed out just a second ago could also be transformed into a public art opportunity as a painted pavement. Next. And so here we have rendered views that bring the concept to life just a little bit more. The first view is showing the before and after, looking towards the gazebo and police station from the senior center. They're from slightly different angles, but you get the idea. The main concepts that are on display here are added trees, more accessible pathways, and then the rain gardens. All right, perfect. And then this is another view, also next to the senior center, but looking more towards the library. You can see some of that permeable paving and the larger crossing as well on the left-hand side, as well as some of the berms on the right-hand side, rain gardens, pathways, and trees. Next. And then this is a view from the other side, right next to that existing mural by the police station that says Portland Fair. Yeah. And it's looking towards the senior center in the distance. So it's right next to that existing playground with some shade structures overhead. And this would all be additional green space. So currently this is all impervious paving, but we were able to gain some of that area back, and it could be another resource for people if they were going to have a picnic. So moving on to next slide. I don't know if we have another one. Okay, so now I'll go ahead and pass it off to Jeffrey, who is going to discuss implementation and next steps.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Ellie. Yeah, so a couple more slides and then we'll open up for some dialogue and some feedback, but wanted to spend a few seconds just talking about where we are in the process, some of the final recommendations that go beyond the design and some of the next steps ahead of us. So if we go to the next slide here. So some of the broader actions. So what's great, frankly, about doing this type of work with the community and with the state organizations is that you'll now, as a community, have this report as a guiding document that have identified a lot of the contributing factors towards some of the flooding issues, as Lorraine and Ellie went through, as well as that toolkit that will give you the opportunities to think about advancing this design in ways that'll help you think about funding and about making it even more specific to your design and your community character. So some of the critical next steps in getting there as a community is finalizing the draft report that we're putting together in addition to the PowerPoint and the presentation you're seeing this evening. That report and the timeline is going to be early January for us to wrap it up. And I think one of the most important things about moving a plan from planning stages into implementation is thinking ahead about future funding and understanding the sources of those funding so that you can take the design and the ideas that you've seen conceptually illustrated this evening and get into some of the design development aspects through seeking funding and securing it and moving the project forward. Clearly, in the next steps that we've been able to tell through the work that we've done is that, frankly, it's a pretty complicated part of your downtown with the drainage systems that Ellie talked about and how some of the pipes work together and some of the flooding. While our team has done a pretty significant amount of modeling, we realize with some more focus on that modeling and testing other scenarios for different rain events, you can further optimize those recommendations and kind of balance and kind of calibrate everything within your toolbox and make it optimized to perform at a very high level. So while there's some thoughts that we have about replacing the pipes and about the rain gardens and some of those performing things and reducing imperviance, the amount of further calibration we think will be a really good next step as you go in through design development. And then clearly, as you illustrate these concept sketches and these kind of interesting renderings that we've been looking at, to be able to go through what we call schematic design, confirm the approach with the town leadership, and then circle back to the community so you can see as the design develops further, the community can see as that progress moves forward. Clearly, refining some of the costs. We'll talk a little bit about the cost during our Q&A this evening as well, but understanding the cost, how it's going to be funded, and how to get the implementation steps in the process. And then finding ways of going through what we call design, development, and construction. So these things usually take months to go through design, development, and construction documentation so that ready to go out to the contractors and be bid and so forth. And then really working with the town closely to understand some of the implementation steps along the way through construction. So it's timed well. You understand how do you maybe temporarily move parking around and access and those things. So those are things that would come after our report, but we're going to put these types of recommendations so that it's clear on how the town can move forward into those next steps as we move down into implementation once we're done in early January of next year as well. In terms of process, let's go to the next slide and where we are in terms of timeline. Jump ahead to that one. So, you know, as Lorraine mentioned, Ellie mentioned, John and Mary, that we've really had a great time working with Dan and folks in the town from the inventory and analysis phase that we did, coming up with several options. We've been working through what's called the cost benefit analysis, where we can understand the costs and some of the trade-offs and some of the funding mechanisms. And as I mentioned, we're very much in the process of wrapping up our final report and packaging that. So here we're at the end of our process, public meeting number 2. We're going to talk to the advisory committee that's been really helpful along the entire process one more time. That's been a sounding board and giving us guidance on how we've been moving the whole project forward as we close things out. So with that, as a fair amount of background and update on the final design, we'd love to pause here and frankly, we have a smaller group tonight that we can kind of open it up for conversation, but I think we'd love to hear your thoughts about the final design, and we'd love to focus on thoughts around implementation and next steps and how that would work. So I think, Lorraine, you need to close out the teams that's on your, I'm sure you're close out the teams that's on your dashboard right now, and then we'll go back to the PowerPoint slide deck. I think you might have clicked on the wrong button there. There we go. Okay, cool. So with that, let's go through and maybe you can share the final slide for the discussion. Great. And we'll open it up for conversation. Okay, great. Excellent. So I think to facilitate this, I think if people want to raise their hands, you can raise your hands and join the conversation. Or again, I think there's a small enough group if people want to just join in the conversation. And we're going to have up on the screen, we have the final rendered plan that's here as well. And we have some of the renderings that we've shown through Ellie on the next couple of slides. So who'd like to get us started and talk about the vision plan and moving this area forward?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. It's Bob.
Hey, Bob, how are you?
Hi, good, thanks. Couple questions. This catch basin E with the undersized outlet pipe, do we know at this point, where that pipe drains into and you know, how much of an issue or how much of a problem would it be to replace that one pipe with the correct size pipe?
Great. I think one of our maps actually shows that system in one of our earlier slides.
Okay.
It shows where it drains to, but it drains down towards Freestone Ave is where that ultimately goes out toward the south on this image, but maybe you can bring up the map that shows where that network is as well. And then we'll pause there and then talk about the steps that it would take.
Okay.
I think it's one of the first ones.
The good news is what was discovered during the initial analysis of the system is that area that's highlighted in blue, that is the pipe that's of the greatest concern. So we do know that this all drains out towards Freestone Avenue, but the other pipes in the system seem to be appropriately sized. It's just that one section that is about the same size as the other pipes in that drain into catch basin E. So it needs to be larger in order to accommodate the water flow.
Thanks. My other question has to do with the parking area near the senior center. I believe the term that was used was permeable paving. And if I got that right, could someone explain to me what permeable paving is?
Yes.
That's great.
Yes. So permeable paving is a paving system that the water, when it lands on the surface, it just gets, it just goes right into the surface, whether or not it's concrete or asphalt. It has to do with the size of the composites that makes it up, so that there's more holes, and it's, you end up not having runoff from it. It ends up just absorbing through. It's a little bit more expensive, but it just removes that amount of pavement from being one that produces runoff, adds to the runoff amount for the whole project.
How about the durability of such a product? Is it comparable to impervious paving?
It has been. You have to, we have over the years, they've really been improving the development of it. University of New Hampshire has done a number of studies with this and followed it, and it does seem that the pervious and types of pavements are really holding up. It does take some of them, for like asphalt, you might have to do a little bit of maintenance to it, but it does improve the whole situation when you've got a flooding situation.
And then my last question has to do with the new walkways that are being proposed through the park. Would those be this same material, or because it almost seems like you're introducing more impervious area, adding the walkways?
It definitely is an option that could be incorporated when it goes to final design, to include those as being, a pervious concrete or pervious asphalt as well.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, excellent. Those are great questions. I think the idea that this is not a one item solution or strategy, it's the idea of doing a lot of little things that will help solve the quantity of runoff that's happening into the drainage system today by putting in less asphalt and less, impervious areas. So the idea that we're trying to play around with that. And as I mentioned, once the design is developed further, and you maybe incorporate the ideas of studying some of the sidewalks that might be pervious, that you can better calibrate the model, the future model, and look at right sizing some of the pipes based on further design input as the design advances further. But they're really good questions, and those things can be looked at further through design development as well.
I would just, one other aspect of the question, Bob, is also we talked about reducing the amount of existing pavement. And I think that this slide really shows it quite well. We discovered after looking at it that the width of, for example, the aisle behind the police station between these two parking bays is way oversized, and that you really don't need to have, that much width to for an aisle in a parking lot. We discussed this with Chief Cunningham and DPW, and they were in support. So right there, that was a great way to also reduce a chunk of the impervious asphalt area. So, and it gained us more green space and an opportunity to put in rain gardens. So it was a win-win.
So other questions, comments, feel free to dive right in the conversation.
Hey, this is Nancy Bronk. I am Inland Wetlands Commissioner here in Portland.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Good question. Now I see you have these rain gardens. Have they been sized out already? You think that is the approximate size of these rain gardens in the drawing?
Yeah, Nancy, this is very conceptual. I think that once we move forward, once the town moves forward, we need to actually do more investigation as far as engineering at the size of those.
Yeah.
Generally, we have, through experience, it seems like it would be about right, and we've got them in low points, so we've used those guidelines to locate them and size them as best we could on a conceptual level.
Okay. No, you guys did a great job. Thank you very much.
And maybe, Lorraine, while we're doing that, we can advance from the existing conditions into the proposed plan as well. That might help stir up some other questions or comments as well. But great
And let me
question.
know if it disappears, because I didn't know it disappeared before, so.
Yeah, no, we got the preferred plan there. Yeah, so that's great. Other questions or comments?
See, Sarah has her hand raised.
Yes,
Hey
Sarah.
guys, how
Hey,
are you?
Sarah.
Great.
Hi,
Good.
great job. Sorry I was a little late getting on. So I just have a question about those parking spaces there, like kind of, across from my office there.
Mhm.
So are those a definite that they will be put there?
Again, this is very conceptual, so.
Yeah.
I'm
I think
just curious with, how would you go about to see if this was, I guess, I don't want to say safe, but as I've mentioned, how people just really, travel really fast through there. And I'm just worried about, potential accidents and safety for the children that come there, is also my senior center members.
Yeah, so maybe a couple things, and maybe Ellie can join in, and Lorraine, maybe we can go to the slide that zooms into that area that's part of our slide deck here. But I think the idea of removing some of that pervious paving that Lorraine mentioned down in the lower area so we can create space for some of the rain gardens and free things up and tighten things up was one key objective. Also not losing some of your parking spaces. So the idea of we needed to find a couple of spots to put parking spaces where it would need to be. The other idea of putting it close to the building so you're not having to walk as far, especially maybe some accessible spaces that might be near your front doors to your building. And then maybe lastly, the idea that, when you have nothing next to a road and just kind of open views and so forth, the perception as a driver being able to drive fast versus having activities and cars and feeling like you're in a parking lot actually may help some of that idea. And then maybe, Ella, do you want to talk about the idea of what's in orange on the screen and so forth? That might be another contributing thing that would help with some of the issues you mentioned.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, we had talked about the idea of having a larger pedestrian zone, which still vehicles could cross, but you could even take it a step further and slightly elevate that crossing so it serves as like a speed bump and have contrasting paving. And so then as a driver, as soon as you enter the parking lot, you very quickly have a sense that that there's multiple obstacles that you need to be aware of, and it's slowed down intentionally. These are just a few devices that we have used that have been really effective in the past.
But also the
Great.
idea that we would, we're looking for more comments. So as it progresses to the next phase too, that if there's concerns about quantity or sight lines, we'd take note of those things and pass that on to the next, series of designers that would advance us even further. But that's some of the logic that went into why we did that, if that's helpful.
Yes, thank you so much. And even if it was down just, a little further and not so close to the Waverly side, that would be helpful. And but this is great. Thank you.
This is Nancy Brault again, and I was just wondering, is it possible to move the driveway to the other side of the building entirely?
To the
Sure.
right where there are trees today?
Yes. I don't know if those are property lines or not. Just putting it out there that
Yeah, great question. Yeah, I think the yellow I
No.
believe indicates the property lines that are
No,
there.
the yellow
does.
indicates a study area, but the property line, excuse me, Jeffrey.
No,
sorry.
please go for it. Yes.
But the property lines are indicated with a dotted line that's faded back in this particular image. So it's a little hard to see, but they are there.
Yep. And in that location, Ellie, does the yellow coincide with the property line to the right-hand side of the senior center?
I think it does.
Are they on top
Oh,
of
you know what? Yes, you're correct.
So I think,
Yeah,
yeah,
and
just so if
that's
that's
it.
true, the
Yeah.
idea of just eyeballing that there's probably not enough room to put the driving aisle So it's actually a pretty interesting idea because to kind of get the cars out of the way, frankly. Although the
Right.
front door, back door relationships would be challenging, but, you know, hence we're dealing with real existing conditions that are not, sometimes not so easy to navigate around.
Yeah.
We have the generator back there, the brand new generator as well, so that wouldn't be possible.
I have a question. When, in looking at that driveway, it looks, is that supposed to be one-way traffic, or how is that supposed to work? Is that a two-way, would that be a two-way
It is two-way.
section?
That is
It's
two-way.
currently, it's shown, this is the current width of the driveway now.
Of the existing driveway, that's the current width, and then the bump out with the permeable surface, that's a bump out. That's like an
Yes.
expansion.
Parking spaces, yes,
to what's-
exactly.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure whether you were taking some of the existing driveway and turning it into parking spaces or not, so.
Adjacent to it.
You know,
I
one,
believe we
Maybe we can
sized
go to
that
that
lane.
rendering, Ellie. I think we've got a rendering that shows close to that area. We go down, yeah, that zoomed it. There we go. Just trying to point.
This
it away.
right here.
Maybe the one with the purple on top of it that'll highlight. Yes, that might be helpful.
one option might be to get rid of the entrance from Waverly Avenue. Close that off and have people enter from Freestone. It wouldn't be like a drive-through at that point, which I would think, slow down drivers.
Let me follow up on Bob's idea. I think you could eliminate the Waverly Avenue access by creating a new access behind the police station. So you would still have through traffic. It would be from Main Street to behind the senior center and to the library, and then out to Freestone.
So, for example, where you come in from the police station to the left and you came across through I call it the Village Green, just south of that gazebo, and then into the parking that goes out towards the library. And then you could eliminate the one that goes out towards Waverly Ave, if I'm articulating that correctly, right?
Yes, that's correct.
That's right.
Then you lose all that solid green space.
Yeah, you lose the park.
Well, you gain the green space where the road was along the senior center.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's an interesting comment. So like, how do you want to divide your green space and where do you want to have that located and so forth? But I totally understand the comment and how that would change the traffic flow through the site too.
And I think that all of that, in terms of long range planning, all of the surface, the vehicle surfacing should be
Permeable.
there should be a resolution that beginning today and into the future, any changes in or repair of the pavement would be for permeable material. So that all that area surrounding the police department and the library, all of that current parking surface, vehicle surface, would ultimately be permeable.
Right. So again, we can put that into some of our final thoughts of like what would happen if more of it over time became permeable paving and how that could contribute towards helping alleviate some of the drainage issues, right?
Yeah, well,
that's partly why we wanted to recommend going into the model a little bit further than what we've done to the idea to better calibrate those things. So you might find that you can solve a lot of the problems with the interventions that we're proposing, but the idea of continuing in terms of improving that performance by doing other things later as you renovate things is an interesting idea to kind of make it better as you go, right?
Phasing improvements.
Well, I think invariably you're going to get pushback on the cost elements of any kind of change that is proposed.
Yeah, that's right.
And so to the extent that you can recognize up front that some of this would be sort of legacy treatment to the plan, the implementation.
Right.
It would be true, I think, of the trees as well. When you're the choice of species for shade trees. I know from my experience in an urban situation, it was really important to maintain the health of the sidewalks. And so the type of tree that you plant near a sidewalk or near a parking lot becomes really critical. So to the extent that you can acknowledge that up front is, I think, is a favorable element to the proposal. And my suggestion would be that, if you want to, red oaks, for example, have a kind of a carrot root structure that, unlike other types of trees, and consequently is less threatening shade cover than you would find in oaks or maples or other trees. Anyway, you're on the right track. Thanks.
That's great. Appreciate the comments.
Another suggestion that I had is that really in the plan somewhere that there should be, I suggest that all plantings should be native plantings.
Absolutely. And
no,
and focus on biodiversity.
Yeah.
Great.
We didn't get quite so granular with the recommendations, but I love that you mentioned that, and I will certainly write that in our comments.
Thank you.
This is great. Yeah, we always enjoy when a conversation starts thinking about implementation, constructability, picking actual trees and materials and so forth, because it's exciting to think about getting to implementation and what it can start to look and feel like too. So that's exciting. Other comments or questions? These have been great.
Yeah, this is Bob. I have another question. The number of parking spaces. Has someone done a study and determined that the existing number of spaces are required for this area? Or could even more of them be eliminated like was done by the police station? Or more?
We had several conversations during the last community workshop just about the need for parking in this area. And there hasn't been an official study saying that we need a certain amount, but through feedback from the senior center and the public library, we understand that there still is a demand for parking here. And so it was one of our priorities to maintain the same number of spaces at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what has been done. Is that what is reflected, or is there an increase or a decrease?
It's the same number, correct, Ellie?
Yeah.
Okay. So including those the bump outs, I'm calling them, on the side of the senior center.
Right. So the permeable parking spaces are included in that final count.
Okay. And so they replaced something that was taken out someplace else.
Right. Exactly. There were a couple spaces near the police station and by the playground in the public library.
Right in there.
Yeah, on either side.
And we also reduced, I think, by one just for added green space near the playground on the library side. I think that there was, when we started to try to, pull back some of the cars from the edges of the walkways in the playground area. So, we manipulated it, but again, you could go back in and kind of do other layouts and play with it to keep that number the same.
But through the reconfiguration, there is a net gain of green space. So we were able to keep the same number of parking spaces, but gain the amount of green space overall, which will help significantly with the flooding issues, especially right by the playground area.
Is it fair to say that once that pipe gets right-sized, that it will essentially solve the flooding problem? Is that a fair comment? Is that a good possibility? I'm not advocating to
Yeah,
not have
yeah.
more green space, don't get me wrong. I'm just questioning whether
know.
That's right.
is the problem really the pipe? Is that what we're really talking about here?
I think during our process, you know, we had people that look at stormwater in pretty detail. And as we mentioned, for such a small site, it's pretty complicated, the things that are going on there.
Mhm.
So the idea of like how you model it and replicating certain flood events, I think the idea of right sizing that first and getting the right size pipe will be important. Also just understanding if there's things like further downstream that might be blocking that pipe would be another, as you're going through design development, to test that theory too. But we think the pipe is probably the biggest contributing part to it. But if there's other things in place, that's why you get the toolbox approach, that the idea that you can go above and beyond what's a simple pipe doing, and frankly, try to perform better as a landscape and do the other items. So the idea about heat island effect, shade, cooling, all of those other things are very important at the same time beyond just the pipe, right? But further investigation into that specific pipe to test a few more things, we think is a worthy step to do, but we do think it's the most contributing factor at this point.
Okay, and I just had a question about the scope of this project, and you talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but I want to make sure that I understand. You targeted this area because there was, and please correct me, okay, this is my understanding, and you have to fix that if it's wrong. You targeted this area because there was a known flooding problem, and it was in a location where we have these important infrastructure things in our town. And that's why you looked at this place. Is that correct?
That is correct. And John, you can speak to the history with Circa and with the town, but that's really what this project's about, is identified flooding resiliency problems, looking at it and trying to solve for those problems at a planning level, and then trying to move them forward into projects. And the idea that you have got some critical infrastructure with your municipal buildings and buildings that have been known to flood in the lower levels has really identified itself as a problem as well. So, yeah.
And so that's,
I'm sorry.
so that's basically why you looked at it. And that is like leads to another question I had. Does this problem exist, this type of problem exist in other blocks around Main Street that you're aware of, or did you just not look at it because it wasn't critical infrastructure? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, maybe John and Dan, you can talk about, history with Circa, but also history within the town about other flood prone areas.
Okay.
Dan, you want to go first, or you want me to take that? Well, yeah, speaking from our perspective at UConn, this program does technical assistance for the specific type of combination of issues that you find here, which you touched on, right? So wherever there's critical facilities, public infrastructure that is vulnerable to flooding and heat, those are kind of the places that we prioritize in our outreach. And usually the outreach involves a conversation with the town, confirming, is this an issue that the town has been trying to deal with? And, I think this particular issue has been identified in the town's hazard mitigation plan for FEMA for, several years. So that's why it came to our attention, why we thought this was a good pilot project for our program. So I don't know if that gets at what you're, in terms of other flooding issues in the town. I know there are other flooding issues in the town. And this is not necessarily meant to be like a comprehensive flood resiliency plan for Portland, but, kind of trying to develop some pilot projects in a specific site.
Yeah. I was just curious as to whether situations such as this existed elsewhere along Main Street, I mean, yeah, you know, everybody has all flooding. I got a flooding problem in my basement, but I don't think anybody cares about that. But you know, in the downtown area, are there other things that are similar to this that just don't involve important Portland buildings? It was just a question, that's all. But I understand how it got on your radar because it does have important buildings, so I get it.
Well, and I would just say,
Oh.
sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that one of the advantages of this type of work and the Circa work and having this setting up these toolkits is that the town becomes aware and has an example of those things that can be used in other locations. You know, it's easy to you know, you've got a lot of information and background and such, and so it can be applied in other spots. So I'm sorry, Dan, go please.
No, I was going to say this for a targeted project like this was kind of a unique situation where we knew we had this issue and we thought this could help move us forward in terms of trying to solve it, because I think the police station flooded twice or 3 times since I've been here. I know the senior center parking lot has flooded before. We had suspicion that there was an inadequate piping somewhere in there, but this was something that we could get tangible answers to some of those questions and then potentially help move us forward. You know, Margot from the Rivercock had reached out, you know, wondering if we were interested in you know, some of the answers to some of these questions, and you know, we certainly we're happy to have AECom and you know, look into this for us and give us some solutions. And whether it is just replacing the pipe or incorporating more of these larger solutions, you know, those are things that we'll pass on to the board of selectmen and they can make their determinations from there.
Well, I think that any kind of movement toward beautification and making it you know, more green space, more permeable surfaces, all of those things are good. So I think it's great. The question is who's going to pay for that? So I'm not sure how that happens. Dan, how does that happen?
Yeah, either it could be town funded. We can maybe try to find some grants to offset some of the costs. But you know, this is costing the town money now. In terms of insurance claims, and I believe Kerma's redefining how we get flood payments out. Because like the police station, for example, they're somehow tied in, and this is one thing that we're still feeling. They have floor drains that are tied into some of these systems, and when it floods really bad, they basically backflow and water fountain out into the police station where like the gym is and stuff. So this is something that we have to file insurance claims on, and you know, the insurance companies are for whatever reason changing how some of these claims are made and whether this constitutes a flood or not. And I think this type of flooding, like in the police station, is really kind of getting pushed out of something that we can claim for insurance purposes. So it not only does it impact these important buildings, you know, it's costing the town money through an action.
So there's an incentive to get it fixed.
Absolutely.
And I might also add that we didn't include it in this discussion, but we have been looking into programs available that this, you know, grant programs available that this project might qualify for. And we've started to break down this design into its components and see maybe what parts might qualify for one grant or another. So that will be submitted as part of the final report and will be something that the town can reference to.
Great, thank you.
I also just wanted to say that John can speak to this further, but the state of Connecticut is really looking to help find match for projects that can be applied for at the federal level, so that it alleviates some of that need from the town. And that cost benefit analysis that they're working on as part of this project and hopefully will continue to be calculated based on what the needs of the piping issue is, because that will probably be the most expensive. You know, the project is going to help a lot of people, and that's a very important part of that cost benefit analysis, and will, you know, raise your project above others in the state because it's working on so much public important infrastructure for your town.
So other questions, there's been great questions and comments. Ellie mentioned, you know, part of one of the last steps that we're doing is looking at that cost benefit analysis and in order of magnitude costs. And that'll be in our report so that the town can start to plan for some of those costs or go after some of those grants and know what they might be eligible for. Many of them involve matching funds that the town would have to work with independent of the funding source. So that's part of our action plan about trying to get you set up for those steps as well.
Just a question, but more of a comment is, in my opinion, making this area more walkable. You get a better connection from Main Street to the library, and Trout Street to the senior center. You know, right now, it's not very appealing to, you know, to take a walk through that area, in my opinion. But you know, concept plan here makes it much more appealing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a build it and they will come kind of thing. I think it's really quite, you know, it could be really beautiful. And I do want to put in another vote for the permeable material on the sidewalks, because you are adding a significant amount of sidewalks, which is great, but you know, kind of takes away, obviously, you know, it's like takes away from the green. So I think it's a great investment.
Great feedback.
Thank you.
There's a lot more options for permeable material for pedestrian walkways versus
Right.
for vehicular traffic. So that's very doable.
Great. Other comments, questions?
This could be your town center, Elwin. You never know.
Yeah. Well, you know, as Lorraine mentioned, we've had a chance to tour this as the consultant team and with Circa, and you know, it's a pretty interesting and unique little place within the downtown area. And you know, all these little tiny changes could make a big difference in terms of moving little pieces around and opening up more land and more connectivity in what's a pretty small little thing that might be hidden to some folks. So trying to squeeze out every little piece of this thing is kind of an interesting thing. And I think we've enjoyed, frankly, the idea of these little changes could lead to something a little bit bigger. It's been kind of fun to work on it from that perspective. So I'm glad folks are into these little changes. You know, a lot of time went into those little moves, which could hopefully add to something more significant.
Yep, thank you.
Any more other comments that people are adding in here too? I guess, or questions? Let me just see. That's great. Like maybe Dan, maybe I'll just do a little bit of a circuit amongst our team here. Like Dan, any other, you know, kind of in reflection or thoughts about or what next from the town's perspective that might be notable as we're getting close to wrapping up for tonight?
Yeah, I mean, once we get the final report, I'll probably present it to the board of selectmen and you know, see what kind of steps they want to take, how soon they would like to pursue something like this. I don't think it's an option to really, you know, keep the status quo. I think we'd just be shooting ourselves in the foot. I think we should get out ahead of this and make sure, you know, our police station isn't flooded out. I think that's pretty important. So, and the fact that it is costing us money and we may not be able to claim this for insurance anymore. I think that should push us to action. So, yeah, I'm going to present it to the board and then take direction from them.
And maybe go over to the John and to Mary at Circa. Like, it's been great. I think we've learned a lot and shared a lot along the way. Any kind of reflection points for you and thinking back or what could be next for the town?
Well, I was just going to shout out, the amount of work that the AECom team and the members of our advisory committee who are, I see Margot, I saw Sarah before, and Dan has put a lot of time and effort into this. So it really has been almost a year now of work, and it's come together really nicely. So thank you everyone for the time that you put into this.
Awesome.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Great. And I'm not sure, John, if you have any thoughts from your end to add on to.
No,
Mary's?
I think that was, I think Mary captured it well. I think where Circa is interested in continuing to work with the town and figure out, if, as the town moves forward with it, trying to connect you with funding opportunities. There is quite a bit of even just state money that's available right now, or that will become available in the next 6 months through something called the Deep Climate Resilience Fund. And I think this would be a perfect project for that grant program. So we're happy to continue to work with you. And I know there are some technical questions that we have to continue to wrap our heads around. We're just excited to try to see this get to a place where we can take action and help the town implement the plan.
Yeah, thanks for that, John. Appreciate that. And maybe last call for any other public or members on the call tonight. Any other questions or thoughts? And if not, maybe Lorraine, I'll hand it back to you to close us out for final thoughts from us. And
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, again, thank you all. Your comments are terrific. We really appreciate them. As we've said, we've worked, the year together as a large team, and it's always exciting to get to this point. And we're really looking forward to finishing this and getting it to you, Dan, and to the rest of the town so that we can, visit in a year or so and see some of those improvements happening, or, see it moving forward. So again, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, truly. All right. Well, I think we're good. We're a little early than our 7:30, but I think we can wrap it up. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good
Night, all.
Everybody, thank you for joining.
Thanks, guys.